Hello, everyone. I am Ashley Garau, and I am the Senior Coordinator for the Industry Conference. To begin, we encourage you to reflect on the land that you are on and its history. TIFF and Glen Gould Studio are located on the treaty lands and the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit and the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Wendat, and the Haudenosaunee. The territory is within the lands protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant and is home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We are grateful to work on this land and to bring the work of Indigenous artists to our audience. For this microsession, The Green Lens, the role of agencies and funders in creating a more eco-responsible industry, we will discuss the ways in which screen-based industry has undergone a shift to more eco-responsible and the role that agencies and funders play in encouraging this change. We'd like to thank our lead sponsor, Bell, our major sponsors, RBC, Visa, Bulgari, our major industry supporters, Telefilm Canada and Ontario Creates. Leading this conversation is Ken Proulx, Director of Event Management at Telefilm Canada. Ken, the floor is yours.
Test. Hey everyone, bonjour tout le monde. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here. As mentioned, my name is Ken Proulx. I'd like to say that for those who can't see me, I am a male. I have short black hair. I'm wearing a navy suit and beige pants and some stubble on my face that I have a hard time maintaining because I grow a beard very quickly. So thank you all for being here today for the microsession, The Green Lens. So Telefilm's it's sponsored by Telefilm. Telefilm is delighted to support this important conversation on sustainability efforts in the screen-based industry. We're here to share and learn with our other panelists. The aspect we want to focus on more specifically is the role of funding agencies, organizations, as mentioned, and like all of ours play here a role in impacting positive change, how we can help change minds, change production practices, and ensure greener, healthier crews and sets for our colleagues. So a little background, inspired by an Indigenous perspective that story and land and language are fundamentally interconnected. Telefilm launched its first action plan on eco-responsibility earlier this year with the aim to support the industry through informed business practices and establish science-based policies and targets for ourselves in the near future. As part of our action plan this summer, we commissioned an industry sustainability awareness survey that was supported by our national industry partners like Black Screen Office, CBC, Canada Media Fund, Indigenous Screen Office, l'Association québécoise de la production médiatique, Canadian Media Producers Association, National Film Board, and Radio Canada. Collaboration in this space is essential if we want to succeed, obviously. What we know and what we have learned from our work in improving inclusivity and diversity is that we can only make positive change working in partnerships. So I'm happy to share that over 400 people responded to our industry-wide survey, and the results and finding of this research study is published today. So you can see that on telefilm.ca, or if you subscribe to our newsletter, it's already in your inbox. So a majority of the industry workers think it's important their workplaces incorporate sustainable green production practices, but that they want and need to learn more about it and how they can contribute it. So that's why we're having this discussion today, and I'm super happy you guys are all here to hear us talk about it, and looking forward to your questions as well after. So let me get right to it. Our panelists, I'm super happy to have you guys here today. To my right, immediate right, Isabel Davis, Executive Director of Screen Scotland. A couple of years ago, Screen Scotland commissioned Creative Carbon Scotland to undertake research to identify appropriate means, opportunities, and instrument for Screen Scotland to promote stronger mitigation of carbon emissions in the screen sector, predominantly in production. So Isabel can speak on the progress of that report and more generally about the new public sector sustainability manager roles that are popping up all across the United Kingdom. And at the end there, Prem Gill, CEO of Creative BC. Creative BC is designated by the province of British Columbia to focus on uniting, sustaining, and growing British Columbia's dynamic and diverse creative sector, including motion picture, music, and sound recording, interactive and digital media, magazine and book publishing. Sustainable production efforts in British Columbia were formalized about 10 years ago through the Real Green Initiative. And that's a resource center with a collection of best practices to help productions reduce their environmental impacts. And you have a sustainability lead on your team as well, right, to champion this work. So I'm going to moderate today. Again, my name is Ken Proulx. I'm Director of Events Management at Telefilm Canada. I'm also on the Eco Committee at Telefilm with my colleague Elisa and Gill, who are in the front row here. So let's get right to it. So you're both leading work on this priority in your spaces. Personally, what drew you to this, or what drew you to kind of start? And I guess we can start with Prem.
Yeah, sure. It's great to see everybody. Thank you so much for coming, and Telefilm for inviting me to be part of this conversation today. At Creative BC, formerly the organization was known as BC Film. It changed names in 2013. It's really started in 2006 at the Provincial Film Commission, this work. And I mean, for all the obvious reasons, and we're the West Coast, and you know, it's where Greenpeace started, so it's kind of in the DNA of the community out there. And certainly a lot of early work in this industry started in productions in BC. And, you know, I mean, for me personally, it's also the passion of the people that I work with around me that really help drive this and push for this long before we were willing to even, or had the means and the capacity to commit funding to it. And we worked very closely with colleagues in the UK at BAFTA, which I'll speak to a little more later, in the establishment of licensing tools from them for the Canadian territories and provinces. And soon after, CBC and Telefilm and other provinces joined us in this initiative, which we call Real Green. And I think in Ontario, it's called Ontario Green Screen. There's a different name in Quebec, but we all are on a committee nationally together. And, you know, I think we're very fortunate, especially, and I live in Vancouver. Our Vancouver Film Commissioner is here today, Jeff Teoley. He's a good person to talk to about green energy initiatives that this city is undertaking, is that the municipalities in the Vancouver region really help support the work that we're trying to get done here in terms of you know, power drops available, the types of things, recycling facilities. There are basic tools that don't necessarily exist in all jurisdictions across the country, even in North America. So it was really kind of a no-brainer, like, why aren't we doing this stuff? Because a lot of the table stakes, as we like to say, we're already there.
Interesting, thanks. And it's an interesting topic, you know, that's come up in a lot of our discussions too, is that, you know, filmmakers, you know, have the appetite, want to be more eco-responsible, but they're at the mercy as well of the municipalities. You know, we're not always filming in Toronto or Montreal or Vancouver. Sometimes we're, you know, out in areas that maybe aren't as up to speed. So let's go back to that after, but that's a really good point. And Isabel, from your side, how are things going in Scotland with the initiatives?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Good afternoon and bonjour. Say that. So I've got my hair straight back in a little bun if anyone can't see me, and wearing some jeans, and I'm sorry I'm not smart, it's my last day at TIFF, so it's all getting a bit ropey. So, and just to say, I think it might be helpful just to say a couple of words about Scotland as well, because I run the Screen Scotland, which is the film and TV agency. So we are, I guess, like Ontario Creates, what have you. And Scotland is part of the UK, part of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. So we are a nation within the UK, if you like. We do have the Scottish Government, which is headed up by Nicola Sturgeon. I think it's worth saying that the voted government of Scotland is a coalition between the Scottish National Party and the Green Party. So that, yeah, we have a very profound drive from our government, happily, to get to net zero, and they've set themselves some very ambitious targets. Glasgow was the host country for COP26, so we're working in a very useful context in terms of how we get to net zero and get there faster across everything that we do. So how did we come into this space? The other thing I will say to you, I'm very sorry, I am the head of the agency, but we have a fantastic person who isn't in Toronto because she wasn't coming anyway, and I am if you like, a product of reduce, reuse, and recycle that I was here anyway. I think it would save the carbon by putting me up. So it's been very useful for me to kind of come in here and really get to grips with what we're doing. So as Prem says, it's I think it's now fair to say it's a no-brainer why we would do this. Why would we even try to reduce the carbon footprint of our industry? I think it's pretty clear that people are looking to us, and I guess that we are in an industry that comprises endless little atoms of activity, whether that's the freelance nature of our workforce, whether it's the kind of knitted together infrastructure of studios and facilities and camera companies and equipment hire and little production bases across even a small country such as the UK. We are knitted together by people working across a very, very complex value chain, all on project by project basis. So, as with so many other issues, this is one that is screaming out for some coordination. And by the way, I will also point at my dear colleague Sorrel Geddes, who is at the British Film Commission and actually heads up the UK group of sustainability managers. So that's who I'm standing for, as a Scottish sustainability manager, which is a new role. I guess we'll get into that. But the final thing I would say, and this again runs through Scottish Government in terms of their vision for our country, which is that we want to be a well-being economy, and the links between well-being and doing everything we can to save this one and only precious planet of all of ours is incredibly important. And I think for our industry, the cognitive dissonance of working in an industry that is actually horribly wasteful by its very nature, but being people who I think it's fair to say by and large do love our planet. If you are a location scouts, you probably got into that because you love you love being around nature. To sort of be part of an industry that is sort of burning up natural resources is horrible, and it's that's, if you're living with that day to day, that's not good. It's not good for mental health apart from anything else. So I guess that's a few reasons why we're here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And question for both of you, just based on those things too. So it's obvious, we had 400 respondents to the industry survey where we're seeing that the appetite to learn, to be more involved, to take things to the next level is there. But why should productions care as well? You know what I mean? Like, why should they keep caring? Because there is a point where, we're going to get to where this is, it's a mandate for all of us as agencies and funding organizations. But at the end of the day, a filmmaker may get to a point where it's like, well, this is costing me more money, or it's hard for me to make an indie film or a budget film, and then I'm fighting with the municipalities, like getting back to what we were talking about. So, what is that? What's going to make people stay with it? What's what's our role in that?
Well, I guess I defer to Prem on a lot of this. I think we have to start from the idea that there are more metrics than the economic. And for people to be looking production by production, it's really tempting. I mean, it's no news to anyone here that we're in a production boom. People are cutting corners all over the time. It's in a way the worst time to ask people to look beyond the bottom line of any given production that is absolutely essential, because there won't be a planet. I mean, it's as simple as that. There won't be a planet. We won't have a careers to pass on to the next generation or the existing generation. If we don't, we have a responsibility to do that.
Yeah, no, I exactly. And I think, from when it comes to anything, let's say social change related or doing the right thing, I don't think as government funders and agencies, we don't want to have to force people to do the right thing. So our approach has been, building and developing toolkits with industry, with colleagues around the world who are committed to the same work. So we have a real green course that we adapted from our agreement with BAFTA, which, Ontario is doing, Manitoba is doing, BC is doing, Quebec is doing. I think telefilm producers who sign contracts with telefilm make commitments. Am I making things up right now? I'm looking at you, Lisa. But this is coming, right? These are the kinds of things when you ask what funders can do, rather than like it's kind of like you have a a non-harassment policy that you agree to when you sign a contract for funding. It's very similar from that respect, but we kind of have to build a tool. So we have a course called the sustainability course that used to be a 2-3 day course. We've narrowed it down to 3 hours. You can do it on Zoom. You get a certificate after. We encourage anybody getting funding from us to participate in this course. There are different productions have ambassadors on set. We also have a sustainability lead on our team. Her name's Smiley Karana. She's very accessible, similar to you, Isabel. She's in the day to day. I'm at that 100,000 foot level, but it is all of these individual commitments and being relentless at it. And we have a national Real Green committee. We have a local advisory committee. Our local advisory committee is made up of studio owners, of Disney's on it, Sony is on it, Netflix is a member, the Producers Association, William F. White's. Everybody is part of this committee and contributes to it financially for us to be able to do our work. So it has to be an industry-wide effort, and multiple things have to happen at the same time. I always say the same thing about equity and diversity. It's not going to be one thing that suddenly is the magical thing that changes everything. I mean, in BC, we lived through a heat dome last year and massive floods like we'd never seen before. So if there was ever a place that is living and seeing this stuff right now, I think that the fear is in people, most people. And I mean, Newfoundland just a few days ago had a hurricane that was devastating.
Can I just say, I think that's so well said. And the point is, as you've just illustrated, we're pushing on an open door with regard to every level of production, whether that's the streamers or the majors or the independent production or individuals, by and large want to do the right thing. It's just they don't necessarily have the full 360 on what that could mean. As you say, this is a game of many moving parts. So somebody might think they're doing the right thing by recycling. It's great, but how about the Jennies? And it's not necessarily within their gift. So unless there is coordination, I think people want to do the right thing, but they're not necessarily. They don't have it within their gift, and they don't necessarily have the information, which is why these sustainability managers are the linchpins. They're, if you like, air traffic control. They are personalized go-tos to.
And that's it. So maybe can you expand on what their role is or what their mandate is?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so in the UK, we now have, I think, Sorrel will correct me, but I think every one of the regional and national agencies has a person. So I think we've all collectively realised that the will is there from industry, but there isn't the knowledge or the coordination. So the role is sort of twofold. One is being that kind of hotline advice. What are the best practices? Who can I go to? So in our case, it's Marie-Claire Bowser. She is building lists of carbon neutral or low carbon suppliers so that she can help people put their production together in the most carbon neutral way. She's in touch with all of the agencies across Scotland and the rest of the country so that, for example, if a set is being taken down at the end of production, maybe somebody else wants it. So she's finding ways in which, and by the way, looking really laterally about that, does a theatre company want the set before it's struck, and so on. What can be repurposed, recycled? How do we end up not burning wood and trashing it at the end of it?
So really just facilitating the process for upcycling and repurposing.
She's resource for
we call that like the circular economy, right? One of our strategic goals, and we have what we call the sustainable lockup. So the same thing where a lot of the flats go. This is where it's interesting where you have the larger productions, because we have many large, Disney, Netflix, large shows do, lots of great independent or smaller scale productions. You can go and get this stuff for free.
Yeah.
So, and it's also like set deck, like, things, costumes, like things that may have gotten trashed or put in the landfill or whatever. I think the other thing is really helping people understand where does, we have, so in our office, we have an office still, and sometimes people come to it these days, but we have all the recycling from like soft plastics to white styrofoam, but it's like, okay, where does it actually go? Like, I feel good when I bring all my soft plastic from home and put it in the thing at the office and then somebody picks it up. And it's really helping everybody understand a little bit more about where it goes. The other thing that the productions are doing is, there's been several productions that will plant, 1,000 trees in a certain conservation area. at BC after they've finished as part of their community give back. So it's really that end to end. But I'll just add quickly one more thing. The major studios and production facilities all have sustainability managers now. So there's the agencies that also have people that can help support this, but then they have, there's a facility called Vancouver Film Studios. They are a B Corp. They actually doesn't have nothing to do with the B Corp, but they actually have bees like on their rooftop. So they're also, you know, they have their own honey, but they're also doing everything, kind of trying to be the most sustainable, you know, studio facility around. So it's, and you know, people are competitive. This is what I do like. This is such a, people are competitive in the industry. So if one of them does it, everybody else will be like, well, why aren't we doing that?
Yeah, and so around that, is there in BC or in Scotland, this is for either of you, is there an actual certification, an official green certification that like stamp that you put on a production?
Well, I guess we're both using Albert,
Yes.
which is an initiative of BAFTA, which is, you know, allows a production to be certified, and that goes across film and TV. So, you know, I think it's been great to have that benchmark. Obviously, the US has its own certification process, and I guess in both of our jurisdictions, we welcome a lot of US production. And I think it's fair to say we would be very, very, you know, happy to see US certification as well. I mean, I guess the goal is at least it sort of gives a production something at the top end to look at and measure themselves by, and to provide some consistent data at the other end.
Yeah, it's called the carbon calculator, and it works and then it doesn't work. It's not, we're trying to adapt it better for Canada and for our jurisdictions. And then who is the arbiter of it? Like, we don't have the authority at this point to say, like, we give you the green seal of approval. You know, you'll see productions that have like an HBO show that'll have HBO green at the end of it, because they themselves are no regulator or like we also, so Creative BC, we're also the Film Commission. We're also the tax credit administrator. So we do have tools in our toolkit that could potentially be used to do some of that work. But I think, I think across the country, we're trying to figure out, we have this National Real Green Committee, you know, is it going to happen provincially? Is it a national thing? And, you know, the results that sort of, you know, spit out of the Albert tool at the end of the day, do they, you know, is it the right information that we need to certify? I think that's where we're kind of stuck.
Exactly. And I think, you know, we don't have the UK as a whole has a tax credit system, which, you know, Screen Scotland is not a part of, other than it. Of course, it applies in Scotland, but we do have an incentive fund, which I guess is our version of your provincial tax credits, generous tax credits. And so, yes, that sort of leverage, I think it's fair to say that we, you know, in negotiating with a production on the incentive, you know, in addition to everything else, we ask for production around training and DI and inclusion and the use of Scottish crew. I think we can make some bigger swings, you know, but having an individual production conversation rather than having everyone hit the baseline. It's something else that's just in terms of certification and I guess the challenges of that being the tool with which we, you know, get productions to sort of fall in line is that, you know, we both have very diverse geography, both Canada and the UK, and certainly Scotland geographically doesn't look like much of the rest of the UK. So some of those big ticket items on Albert around transport and how you travel look pretty different. So, you know, so finding a way in which by no means are we letting people off the hook far from it, but that you acknowledge local difference.
We have a big country. So if you're producing, you know, there's a big Disney production called Peter and Wendy that's a feature that's coming out sometime next year. They did some production in BC. They did some in Newfoundland. Wow. So that's literally, you know, I'm sure, you know, people were flying across the country. And carbon, we all know carbon is the secret sauce to some extent, or we still have some time to be less, for it to be less bad.
Yeah.
And, you know, that is where, so there's been like, do you need as many people need to come up from LA? What are the light bulbs you're using? You know, the power drops, which the city of Vancouver has had for, I'm going to say like 5, 6, maybe more years, like that. So you're not bringing in diesel generators into neighborhoods, all this kind of stuff. it starts to add up.
It's interesting that I guess because of the pandemic, that those big production numbers, which I guess will still come back, where you are globe trotting for the most exciting locations, if it's the latest James Bond film, for example, or a Bourne film or what have you. Whereas the trend has been so much towards where can we find it locally, and I guess we're both, as Canada and Scotland and the wider UK, in a position where you can find an extraordinary number of locations. Even within Scotland, we had a show last year which found San Francisco, Japan, Russia, Moscow, because specifically, Scottish architects built Moscow effectively. So lucky us, we got that entire production in our little country of 5 million people. Yeah. And it's credible. And I think so. There've been all sorts of tricks that we've all learned, including the whole Zoom Teams of it. The virtual aspect of it. That these practices they've got to stay.
Yeah, there's a virtual stage. Where this Percy Jackson series that if you have children in your life of a certain age you might be familiar with, they are shooting fully on a virtual stage in BC, and I haven't seen the magic of it, but I've heard that it's they don't have to go to Amsterdam to get those exterior shots. They don't have to go to the Met in New York. Like, it is quite the technology in terms of how it can help in this, in that be in one space, and cities like Toronto, Vancouver, London will have these types of studios, and they're only going to grow, but that will also change things significantly.
Well, that's it. And to go back to the calculating, using the carbon calculator, we're going to have all this data, right? So we're going to, more and more productions are going to start doing their calculations, and we're going to have the data. At what point do we start sort of looking at concretely as an industry, how do we reduce as a whole? You know what I mean? What are those tools? What are those things? Is it a database of suppliers, that are more green than others? Do you see where I'm going with this? And I guess what is our role in that? Telefilm and Creative BC, Screen Scotland. Like, how do we fit in?
Yeah, we have lists of green vendors. We have the toolkits on how to approach certain aspects of production. Another piece that we've been working on is called climate storytelling, which again, we're having a national conversation about that, working with the producers and the writers and the directors, like at that level, how do you incorporate something into your show, your production? So, we don't have paper cups up here. Everybody's using metal straws. You see someone walk into a coffee shop and they're there with their own mug or their own to-go cup. I think that's going to be another part of it, where you start to normalize these things in the stories themselves.
I do think it's those big ticket items that can't be solved by production. It's about the infrastructure and that conversation with, be it local authorities or wherever the power sits. For example, to have these PowerPoints, so you're moving away from generators to plugging into the grid. This trend towards virtual production, or not simply virtual production, but the kind of more controlled conditions of studios, is for sure set to continue over every show. So you're talking about buildings, and again, that's a big part of the carbon footprint. Are we talking about conversions on new builds? These are things that happen at government policy level,
and they're going to be costly, right? Like there's like Percy Jackson can shoot on this stage, but not many Canadian independent films are going to be able to really afford to do that, or even find the space. But I guess the hope is over time there'll be more of it, so that it will be more accessible.
Yeah. Do you find that you're seeing any organizations in the private sector that are inspiring you, or where you're seeing that there may be inroads to be made, with private sector companies that are, and this could be in the film industry or not, but where there's links to be had?
Yeah, one example is, and maybe they're here in Ontario as well, a company called Driving Force, which most vehicles are rented, or rent the cars, the transportation vehicles, the trucks that are used for production, and they have been slowly, turning their fleet into electric options. Wow. So, that's a big piece of it. Or working with the labor unions actually is very important, like the Teamsters, and helping them, why you shouldn't idle your trucks, which is something that is a norm in the industry, where you leave something idling because, the person will be back in half an hour. And even changing some of those behaviors and helping people understand why. But, I think even seeing, from the catering companies, many of them will have, there's a lot of food left over, let's say, on a lot of productions. that we have refrigerators on certain productions where they have a deal with a charity or a shelter, and they can come and pick up the food, but it's safely stored in the proper way. It's not just we're going to drop this food off at the shelter. You have to actually coordinate it with local organizations as well.
We have an organization called Reset, which is one of these companies that's looking to repurpose all of those enormous amount of production materials that are just going to go to waste or indeed landfill at the end of production. And indeed Zero Food Waste is another one that Mary Claire has been talking to. So that's not film or TV specific, but plugging into other organizations where we have these insane resources that we use over a short period of time, and finding ways that production can plug into them.
There's PPE recycling too now. That
that must be the last 2 years.
I mean, that was sort of we were like, oh God, like when we were all coming back and working on the protocols for production to come back, and there was going to be individualized food packages, and there was going to be all the PPE, like everything to keep people safe and for all the right reasons. But then there was also a rethinking of like, okay, is the food packaged in compostable materials? Where do we, we actually have even in our office, and we have a proper PPE bin where you can toss your masks in because they shouldn't go in the regular way. So all of these things that who knew we'd have to figure that one out, right?
That's it. And I mean, it's going back to to our survey and just seeing the amount of responses we got, and that really it's around training and education and stuff like that. BC obviously quite a bit ahead of a lot of other provinces. Where do we start? Where do people start with on education and training in other sectors? What worked in BC?
I mean, our Real Green page on our website, which if you go to creativebc.com, it's very easy to link it to Real Green. Even other, we work across different industries. We ask them to use it as inspiration as well. I think in Canada, actually, we are quite well coordinated at this time especially with Ontario, another large province coming on board with it. I don't think there's really, we should have looked at it from, if you're doing a little short film to a massive feature film, you should be able to use some of the things in the toolkit. We understand scale and capacity and all of those things, and trying to make it easier for people as well.
Interesting.
I mean, I think there are people who are sort of naturally the advocates and the ones who want to affect change, but I think this is a question of behavioural change and how you affect it. I don't think that starts when somebody arrives on set every day. I think that's, of course it's school age education, and for my part, I don't see it happening systematically enough. And then, of course, you have people who can't even bother to toss a carp. So I think there is something. I don't think we're there yet, and I think this question of leadership, which after all is sort of what we're here to talk about, and how you sort of wear that leadership, I would say quite lightly, because it's got to come from grassroots. It's not an accident that our sustainability manager actually works out of BECSU, which is the local union for crew, rather than at the lead agency, because we don't want to be the policeman, being top down and patriarchal or matriarchal, but it doesn't all work. It has to be this sort of, this is power relations affected at every single individual level, where eventually it's kind of embarrassing that you wouldn't put your paper cup, if you have to have a paper cup, in the right bin. I mean, that as I say, I think it's we need to kind of raise the gaze a little bit, thinking for that kind of thing, that's something that has to be what an individual would do at any point in their day, not simply when they come to work in our industry.
What do so back to you, Prem. Obviously, a lot of production services happening in BC. Do you find that it makes you more competitive for productions to come there, being more green?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially a few years ago, before Ontario, our friendly sibling, competitive sibling here in Canada, or even other like Atlanta and New Mexico. That would be, we'd go if we were pitching to Los Angeles. We would definitely, this was on our top five talking points on why you want to be in British Columbia. And there's credit due though to the large productions that a studio like Warner Brothers, they were really critical in really establishing people on their shows who were the sustainability leads. And in fact, Smiley, who works for us, was the sustainability lead on a show, and really embraced it and started an informal community of other sustainability leads. And you're absolutely right, Isabel. It's really that grassroots, it has to come from the people. Nobody in, I don't know, maybe but my view is like, I don't want a government agency or a nonprofit organization like ours that has a mandate from government to be the heavy hand on anything like this. However, if it's not happening and things are getting worse and there's missed opportunities, if there's incentives or there's something related to submitting plans when you apply for a program, I don't know. We don't know what that looks like. But the training is still important, but it's often a lot of new people coming into the industry. It is, while it doesn't seem like that much time, it is time. Who's going to pay you for your time? So really working with productions and with the film schools, we're working with the film schools to make this like a module as part of their teaching for the new folks coming up. Again, the labor organizations, everybody has to go through a motion picture industry training course when they start in BC, so they have to this a module in that too.
How in depth is that training with the schools? Is it like a full class, or is it part of the?
Right now, we're trying to make it helping them make it part of their curriculum.
Yeah.
But that's the generation that's most interested in this because since they've been born, the planet is really melting. Yeah. So I think it's almost less so about the new people coming into the industry, and it's sort of those of us who are the veterans of the industry really just changing our practices like we are thinking about in all aspects of our life right now.
Right. And same question to you, Isabel, about production services. Do you find it makes Scotland more competitive? You said you had a lot of US productions going there.
100%. I mean, I've sort of invited potential US production in, and I've seen the eyes light up when you say this building that is now a film studio is an energy station has been repurposed, and they, and it's not simply that they're going, my studio head's going to love this because I can go back and it's going to be really nice for our brand. And it comes from a very authentic place. I think that people want to see that changing, but for sure, I mean, there's no downside and there's only upside to being able to sell Scotland as a, carbon neutral kind of pioneer, which is certainly the way we would like to be recognized for that. I mean, I find the idea of being competitive in this space, I mean, look, if it helps save the planet, fine, but it's a bit distasteful, quite honestly. I think that the idea, again, like to come back to this idea of leadership or USP, this is one area where we do not need this to be a unique selling point. Let's have it be a selling point, but the idea that I have to be like more carbon, if we can out carbon neutral each other, then everyone wins.
That would be pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
Like,
but I'm not going to be like,
But I totally agree, because it is and we've always approached, yes, we did the original deal with BAFTA, but it was always like, okay, how do we get the rest of the country on board? Because this is not where you want to be proprietary. This is, it's for the greater good, and that's why that Telefilm sits on this national committee. Again, like the major studios, Whites, the independent producers. It's co-chaired between BC and Ontario Creates. This is like we are all in it together, and it's a long play right now.
Would you say Canada's ahead or behind?
I say we're leading in terms of the implementation of a lot of the practices, of the tools. I think Toronto followed Vancouver's lead in their power generator or power drops that they announced a couple of weeks ago. This is good, finally, right? So I think that, again, all those things are appealing. I think every jurisdiction, again, we are fortunate of how we're set up in Canada in some ways that I think we will continue to lead in this. But you want everybody to kind of be pretty caught up to this quickly.
Yeah, and obviously it's not a competition, but in Scotland, do you feel that when you're working with other countries, maybe in co-productions or whatnot, do you feel that you're ahead, or do you feel that that other countries are playing catch up?
I mean, I don't know that necessarily other countries are playing catch up. I mean, as I say, we do a lot of service production. We do co-productions. I think Europe is pretty open in spirit. I've met fabulous colleagues from Amsterdam, Capi Films. I mean, they don't have a sustainability manager. They haven't taken that model, but there's a lot of people in Europe who are very minded to to try and do the right thing. So I think that's right. I mean, I would say that I think we've all got a long way to go. And exactly as Prem has said, like this is not a space where you want to be proprietary about it. There's literally no downside to sharing. So, and again, actually, we need consistency. We don't want to sort of be bringing these tools to people and it's a surprise to them. Like the more we can sort of just propel people forward together, so much the better. So I don't know. I mean, I think we're doing okay, but there's no room for complacency. So
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. I think we want, if somebody's coming, or even Canadians producing in Canada, you kind of want to have similar tools and experiences, whether you're in Alberta or you're in Newfoundland or you're in Vancouver or you're in Toronto. So that is really important, kind of, which is why we try as much as we can, knowing that every province has different governments, every municipality has different leaders. So, there's a lot of different players, but, the collaboration between film commissions internationally on this subject is a top priority. There is a UN group. The acronym is ENZA. I can't remember exactly what it's an acronym for, but they're meeting regularly. We're part of it as Canada. Everybody from the States is in these meetings. So there's a lot of sharing. It's the, I guess when you say, like, when we have, whether it's the Albert tool or other tools, or there's a what is the PGA tool in
Peach and pear.
Peach, or the peach in
for
Atlanta.
Sustainable Production Alliance out of PGA.
That's right. So they, they're getting the data back as well. I guess that's when we'll know. Like, did we really reduce something here, or what did we learn? Part of the use of the calculator is also to understand what you could change, even if you didn't achieve the goal that you thought you were going to.
So I think we're going to wind down into some Q&A, but one kind of question I want to put to both of you, and it's not to put you on the spot or anything like that, but if you had your way, there was no red tape and funding wasn't an issue, what's the biggest next step? What's the next hurdle that we have to get over? I know it's a tough one, but magic wand time, what's
as a funder?
As a funder, yeah. And then, take it as a funder, and then maybe as just in the industry at large.
I mean, I guess if you could make some big infrastructural plays and have no more generators, for example. I mean, I'm looking at Sorrel, she's nodding that, because exactly as you say, like
Fuel usage.
Fuel usage, exactly. Like if we could solve that one, and I guess because it's such a sort of big, complicated infrastructure one with many moving parts to it, if you can nail that one,
that would be. The infrastructure, it's the same thing. Like, all these other things are really important. The paper straws, all of that. Don't stop doing that. But it is like, look, I flew here from Vancouver. I'm staying in a hotel. Like, these are choices I'm making, and as an organization we're making. But this year it's similar to you. Past years there would have been 3 of us here. This year there's only 1 of us, right? So those are actual real conversations now. Yes. And maybe there'll be an electric airplane one day. I don't know. Like, there's electric float planes in BC now. Yeah, exactly. But look, we didn't travel for 3 years. Haven't been to TIFF since 2019. So obviously we kind of managed to figure some things out.
Absolutely. Cool. And what do you think the biggest question from the industry to us is going to be over the next couple of years?
Fuel usage.
What's the number 2 thing that's
Well, I think industry often is looking for subsidies or supports to be able to make change. Whether it's on a specific production, especially for let's say the $500,000 to the $3 million range of a budget. Like, you're really in Canada, that's pretty tight budget, whether you're doing a feature film or a series or something. So yeah.
I totally agree with that. I think if you're talking about independent film or production, there is no margin. All the fat's been cut. So and then if you are a big mobile production that's chosen Vancouver or Scotland or what have you as their production base, you're in and out. You need that infrastructure, you need that local bandwidth to be there for you to sort of plug and play, if you will. So actually, for those guys, it's not necessarily about the money. It's the same with skills. It's like, it's not for lack of will, it's not necessarily for lack of financial resource, but it's really complicated to do these things. And I think that's the role of the people on the ground who are there year in, year out, to provide that and make it as easy as possible, because we can capture and channel the will. It's there.
So, I think I think the appetite is there, the will is there from the industry, and especially from the funding organizations like ours as well. That's why we're keeping the conversation going, trying to make sure that it's always front and center. Thanks for all that. Thanks, guys, for sharing. I think we're going to go to some questions now from the audience. So I'll kick it off. Does anybody have a question? Okay, yes.
Hi there. Thank you very much for coming. We work in the animation industry, and I'm kind of curious about that. Obviously, for the past couple of years, animation had a very interesting pivot because we went out of studio, but within a week, most studios in the country were able to sort of work from home. So we were able to definitely eliminate a lot of commuting and a lot of these gas issues that we've just been talking about. However, of course, electricity charges go up and there's different infrastructure. So I guess two questions. Number one, how can people in the animation industry show that they're making that kind of change? Because that's that's a very difficult metric to compare. And if there isn't, then how can we not be left out of potential grants and potential opportunities in the future?
That's a really, really good question. I'll let you guys answer as well. Just from my perspective at Telefilm, right now we're actually calculating our corporate baseline, like what we as an organization do, and we've had the exact same thing, right? We've shifted from offices to home. So we're going to look at 2019 data, on our once we do our calculation of our full baseline compared to where we are now. And obviously that is a change, but we have to also measure the impact of the people working from home. You're using electricity, you're using computers and different things. So that's still wasteful, but obviously you're not commuting, you're not doing that, so that counts for something, right? So that's a super good point, though. I'm gonna log that one in for when we're doing our own work, and keep that in mind. Thank you for that. But yeah, we're having the same challenge.
Yeah, and we have a very robust visual effects and animation community, and we've been having these conversations on how do we make you part of this. And again, you can't underestimate what the lack of commuting, like on a regular basis, the impact that has. It's actually trying to figure out how to measure that as part of these tools. Before COVID, we were starting to do things like having a power down afternoons, or if you're getting, these sound like kind of silly, but they're minorish things, but we have take out glass containers at the office. If you're going to get lunch, take your own container. This is regular office work too, right? For so many companies and organizations. But it's also one of the things when I've talked to folks in animation is they used to have executives fly up to watch the dailies, or sorry, I don't know all the exact animation language, but they're not. Now they figured out how not to do that. So I think there is a lot of that, but obviously the size and scale of the machines you need to do the work that you do require more power than my little laptop that I use every day. So these are ongoing conversations. We haven't quite cracked the nut on what that looks like, but the not commuting or coming to an office every day certainly is something, again, we should all not take for granted.
Absolutely. Great question. There was another one in the back. Yes.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Prem. I'm from India. I'm a lawyer. So like you said, I would like to congratulate. Like you said, it would be 3 people earlier, and now you're 1 person over here attending. And so here I am representing my client. I was already in Canada, but my clients were in London. So I like the idea that the whole thing is resonating, and we're including a lot more aspects of green climate or green change. So my question specifically is regarding accountability and audit. I understand that you mentioned that you don't want to be patriarchal or you don't want to be authoritative in any manner. But as a lawyer, I must say that when we do transactions and we're doing all these M&A transactions in any space or any background, we have a very important chapter now which has been included in recent past of environment assessment. And any work that we do, and like you said, it's an office environment, consider it like any other workplace. So as a funder, I believe that accountability and audit, despite not being patriarchal, can always be accounted for in terms of say through any of these methods. So as a funder, isn't it important to have some accountability method or some auditing method to keep them, like behavior change also happens through, it's like training a child. It's you know, so you tell them what to do over a period of time and they eventually come around it. And also if you've been spoiled for a long time.
Yeah.
So
It's a very good question.
Yeah.
Very
I
good
think
question,
it's,
yeah.
it's the push and pull, isn't it, right
Yeah.
now? It's like, you know, everyone wants
Yeah.
to sort of have a carrot, but actually sometimes you need a stick. And
Yeah.
I guess that's what we're saying about our business.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, Telefilm's approach, and that's a great question. Thank you. I think, you know, and Lisa here she'll smack me, I'm sure, if I say something wrong. I don't want to say too much. That's a stick. But I think, you know, we weren't experts when we started, you know, our work at Telefilm, but we knew we had to go out and get the answers. And I think we're taking the long and diligent approach of doing the work with the industry ahead of time, calculating, you know, working with the productions and producers to kind of establish that baseline, and then make the kind of harder decisions of, you know, where do we go from there? You know what I mean? How do we enact that change through the data that we've collected? So, you know, yes, we would be accountable down the line to make sure that, you know, people follow along. But we also want to make sure that we're not just rushing into anything and making rash decisions that aren't based on science, first of all, and working with the community as well, industry. But great question.
Oh, I mean, I echo all of that, and exactly, you know, I think it's, you know, there's a sort of sequential process here. So having a sustainability manager, you know, is addressing the fact that actually it's all very well kind of beating people, or indeed, you know, if they don't manage to hit their targets, sometimes it's because they either didn't have the information or the infrastructure isn't there for them to actually, you know, do what they would want to do themselves. So these two things have to sort of go in tandem. So I think we will get to a point where a bit harder line on it, especially where funding's involved. You know, that's an easy one. And you know, in the same way that we audit for other things right now. So if somebody's, you know, promised a skills program, they promise a certain amount of spend, that's a hard audit. You know, that's an accountant coming to us with a certified piece of paper. So
Yeah, and we're having the same conversations around ED&I and workforce, you know, measurement of workforces and diversity initiatives, and the same kind of thing on training. So it's I agree with you. There's some accountability, especially when you're getting public funds. It comes with something, and the start has been you know, having your crew and your production go through the Real Green course, whatever those things are. Do they have their certificate? But there will probably be more to come. I think when we're talking about that hard regulatory stick, it's like you just don't want to make more laws, but you still want to have accountability. There's a simple way to
It's like in a perfect world, you wouldn't make it harder for people, you know what I mean? But you would have everybody, you know, following what needs to be done, you know. So it's finding that balance.
it's the final question for 5 minutes.
Kia ora, Te Okahurangi from New Zealand. I work with the New Zealand Film Commission, but I'm also interested in this conversation in relation to Indigenous people and working on traditional lands, particularly with considerations around our communities. We are having a lot of discussions back in New Zealand around that because a lot of filming is occurring on our lands, and then these are very much impacts, but there's also considerations of how we would manage that, and having the conversations between the industry, the funders, and the traditional owners. What does that look like here?
For us, I mean, we work quite closely with the Indigenous Screen Office here in Canada, and you know, as I mentioned off the top, you know, it's a priority of ours to make sure we're moving forward with the Indigenous perspective in mind. That, you know, land is obviously, everything's connected to the language and everything like that. So yeah, it's very important. It's very important. But obviously, as Telefilm, we're not the experts either. So we include the community in our work.
Yeah, well, certainly, you know, we have, a lot of what we're talking about when it comes to sustainability are, you know, things that, you know, Indigenous people have been doing long before any of us showed up and figured this out. So, you know, acknowledging a lot of the work within those communities as well. And we often have situations where it's, you know, technically crown land, but part of it is part of, one of the local nations, territories, and how you leave that land from when you arrive and when you leave. What does that look like? We had one show a few years ago where there was a grasshopper habitat, and I'm not even kidding about this, that it was some rare grasshopper, and you just couldn't do anything during a certain time of year in this space. So it's like, okay, we have to help this production find somewhere else to do this. And I think the film commissions are playing a big role in this. And then obviously the support and leadership of our, friends and colleagues at the Indigenous Screen Office, but we also, every province and territory across the country has their, local nations that you work with on a local basis. And it's, again, I think it's another one of those things that must happen in tandem.
It's a great question. Sorry.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, there's the Indigenous Screen Office has a protocols document that you're probably familiar with, that we, even when large Hollywood productions arrive in BC, we share the protocols with them, that this is how you work with First Nations, or here's a framework. Please look at it, try to understand it, and it's not a checklist, but we really strongly advise that people, that's another piece of the toolkit.
Yeah, I'd actually love to hear more about New Zealand's practices as well. It'd be interesting. Could inspire. Interesting here. So I got the 2-minute flash. Was there any last questions? Anyone? Yeah.
I had a really quick one.
Sure.
I don't know if you can answer quickly. So I work for one of the film commissions, the film commissioner for one of the GTA regions. So I've heard you mention a couple of times about fighting with the municipalities. So curious, what are the challenges?
Well,
you could do
sitting
that
in front of
very
you is my
briefly.
colleague from the city of Vancouver. It's not, for us, it's not necessarily fighting, it's coordinating activities. I think Vancouver's been a great leader in this, actually, from, every municipality may have different policies. So, the city of Vancouver has power drops. The city of Surrey doesn't exactly have the same things. So we deal with multiple municipalities that may have different things available for productions, haven't had the capacity or the money available to build this out. I don't think I said fighting. We don't certainly fight with the municipalities. Do we, Jeff? Right? No. Okay.
Let's not get a headline in the Toronto Star tomorrow.
No, just say you're just doing a little dance, right? There you go.
I guess we don't have GTA, but in Scotland we have a network of film commissions around Scotland, and they work. Everything looks a little bit different depending on which local authority you're talking about. But just going back, obviously it would be for me to answer a question, I guess, about First Nations. We can expect the after to talk about Scottish history and the English probably. That's another story. But obviously a lot of people will come to
literally
Scotland.
unfolding before our eyes.
But a lot of production that comes to Scotland or even sort of locally originated content will want to go out to the Outer Hebrides. So we've recently had productions on West Ross or North Uist or indeed our Orkney right now. And of course it's about working sensitively with the local communities. And actually happily sometimes we have crew who are from the local community, and that's the absolutely best way to go about things. So and indeed there's a lovely film called Limbo, which is sort of fictional version of Syrian refugees being sent almost, literally to purgatory on the Outer Hebrides. And, that community works so well with the film. They actually invited them to stay because it's also underpopulated. They're losing a lot of their young people to city centres. So in a good version of this, we're certainly bringing economic value and also really importantly allowing communities to see themselves on screen. That's obviously something that ties in, I think, with both the inclusion point but also sustainability.
Amazing, thank you. I think that wraps things up. I got to thank you guys, Isabel, Prem. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you to our translators as well.
Oh, amazing. The volunteers, thank you so much.